Hey guys, what's happening? So we're back for the 8 Deaths of Spider-Man with part 4. And you guys know the drill. If you're just hopping in here, I got a playlist in the description that'll get you all caught up. Whether you want to learn more about this story from the beginning, or if you want to know what's going on in the larger picture with how this connects to One World Under Doom. Either way, I got you covered. So with that said, if you're enjoying these videos, do be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications. Alright, so coming back, we pick up with Peter and Doctor Strange, where this time we find Peter putting together his solution to defeat Sirius, which like we saw in the last issue came by way of Peter setting up a future version of himself to show up at the right time and catch her off guard. And you know, I really do appreciate us actually seeing Peter set this up after he got back, instead of it being one of those things that we're told just happens off panel, because we knew later on this was something he was going to need to do. But also to make sure that this works correctly, Peter combines his tech with the magic being used by way of adding a timer, just so he knows that this device will set up his future self at the right time. And this ends up taking them into a conversation which we kind of already started, because it's here where Peter asks Doctor Strange, how do I stop dying? Because prior to this he's already defeated 3 Scions, where in every case he's used the reeds of Ragador to come back. And as it stands, Peter knows that he can win, but what he doesn't know, and what he wants to know, is how to do it without dying. And so of course Doctor Strange tells him, you don't. And really it just goes back to what I said nearly word for word, because for Doctor Strange, he believes to obtain this great power and face these godlike beings, a price has to be paid. Which makes sense if you're thinking like a sorcerer, cause magic has its costs, but Peter finds it hard to believe that there's no way to defeat these Scions without dying every single time. So Peter asks Strange how does he do it, as far as the agony of dying and all that. So Strange just tells him that he focuses on not losing because of what's at stake, because if the Covenant fails, the pain is inconsequential in comparison to what would happen after. So next Peter asks, what's the point of this Covenant? Because he keeps hearing Strange talk about it. And it almost seems like Strange is a bit frustrated since he's explained all of this before. So Strange just says, I've told you this as well. The Covenant is what holds the casket together. So Peter's just like, but what is this casket? What is it holding back? So Strange just gives him another generic answer, because he tells Peter if the Covenant falls, if the casket falls, unimaginable suffering will befall the planet and every single human living upon it. That must not happen. As the champion, that should be your one and only concern. And right there Peter's like, okay, yeah, fine, whatever, I get it Strange, keep dying and stop asking questions for the good of humanity. And just before Strange leaves, he's like, you know, good luck with the twins. And right there Peter's like, yeah, thanks. I'm sure they're great party guests. I'll tell them you said hello. And it's almost like you can feel Peter's frustration here, because he didn't ask for this. He didn't even volunteer for it. And it's not like Peter believes that Strange means him any harm, but Peter truly believes that there has to be a way to see this through without having to die every single time. So following this, next we head over to the gallery show, which prior to this Randy entered Peter into, while also making himself Peter's self-appointed agent. But while they're here and Peter's looking at the selection of his photos that Randy submitted on Peter's behalf, there's a bunch of Peter's Spider-Man pictures here. So when Peter sees this, he's like, okay, so what's the story we're telling with these? And Randy's just like, oh, it's a classic story of David and Goliath. Like you see here how Spider-Man's clearly outmatched in so many ways. And Peter's just looking at these like, I wouldn't say Spider-Man was outmatched, but it's just one of those things where Randy, he means well, because he already talked to the gallery owner Alice, and they were planning to sell these as a series, because people are more likely to buy into the story than they would just the photos. But while they're here talking, Peter sees a guy outside in a red suit approaching the window, and he immediately thinks that it's one of the Scions. So he goes to check it out by just telling Randy, yeah, sorry, I think I just saw someone who owes me money. But as it turns out, this guy is just the gallery owner's dad. And it's kind of like, man, any person Peter sees wearing red, he's just looking at them like this could be the next challenge, only for it to turn out to be a false alarm. But as it turns out, the twins are not too far away, standing on a nearby rooftop, watching Peter. And like we saw before, out of these two, Calyx, he's ready to start the challenge now. While on the other hand, Syra, she's telling him they should wait, because this champion's already defeated 3 of their siblings. So statistically, they're not as likely to win. And I also want you guys to keep in mind that the 2 of these twins want something different out of this challenge, because for Calyx, he wants their father's approval, because he believes if they win, their father Sidorak will tell them well done, and they'll rise and claim the earth in their father's name. But in the case of Syra, she's expressed before that she knows her and her siblings are a slave to this challenge, so she wants something that her siblings don't even realize they don't have, and that's freedom. And it's almost like that plays a part into her being more cautious as well, because she wants to take her time and learn more about this new champion. But Calyx, he's approaching this much like the other siblings, because even now he's like he's had enough, and he's telling her that he's just gonna defeat this new challenger and prove to their father that he's the best among them. But right here, Syra tells him, you are going to lose because you underestimate your foe, and all father will see is that you're an arrogant fool. And I gotta admit, it's kind of concerning the amount of wisdom she's displaying here, because it kind of makes you want to root for her. But right after this, when we go back to Peter, we see that he's managed to make the time to help Aunt May out, since he was supposed to give her a hand with putting together the Feast Community Day activities. So he makes the time, and not only that, but he remembers to talk to Norman Osborn about his donation, which May really needed so she could pay the vendors. But even though this is mostly about helping May, part of this also has to do with Peter taking Felicia's advice when she told him about embracing the small bits of joy in life, which in the here and now for Peter, he describes this small bit of joy as manual labor and guilt trips. But I imagine there's a part of him that's really just happy to be able to show up for May, especially in times when she really needs it. And it's kind of funny here because there's a moment where May is like, oh, thank you, Peter. I know you have so much going on. And Peter's just thinking to himself like she doesn't know the half of it. Because even with Peter taking the time to help May out and steal some of these joyful moments to himself, he's still constantly thinking about the next scion. And he's so stressed about it that it's even reached a point to where his spider sense is just a constant hum, which is crazy. And it just reminds me of what we saw back in Dark Ages, where right before everything popped off, Peter, Miles, Gwen, everyone's spider sense was going crazy. And because this threat was so insane, every last one of them, even Peter's daughter May, they were all in excruciating pain. So yeah, as far as this constant hum that Peter's getting from his spider sense right now, I wouldn't say that it's anywhere near that level, but I imagine it's not a comfortable feeling. But while Peter's talking to May here, she asks if he's still bringing Shay over for dinner. So he's just like, yeah, you know, like she's looking forward to it. So right there, May tries to slip in some relationship advice, but Peter's just like, we not doing that on May. No romantic advice. But after this, Peter leaves before him and May can finish the conversation because his spider sense hum is starting to sound more like a roar. And that's mainly because nearby, he's continuously being stalked by Calyx and his crimson canines. But this just leads to Peter getting the drop on him, which is definitely not what Calyx expected, because usually the Scions, they confront the champion first and that's when the challenge would begin. But when Peter shows up, he's like, hey, I challenge you right here, right now. And Calyx is just like, wait, what? No, you can't do that. But the truth is, there are no rules that say that Peter can't. And Syra just confirms this because she tells her brother that the champion can definitely do this because it's only been a tradition for the Scions to issue the challenge first. And so when she says this and Peter sees Syra off to the side, he's just like, wait a minute, do I have to fight you both at once? Because you know, Doctor Strange ain't saying nothing about a three-way. But she just lets him know that she's the younger out of the two of them. So because of that, she'll face him after Calyx loses, which is mad disrespectful, especially with him standing right there. But right away he accepts this challenge, and the first thing he does is send out his crimson canines to go after the civilians down below. And one of them gets to this lady who's walking with her daughter, and Peter's able to get to her and help her out, but only to find out right after that this was just a method of distraction, so Calyx could hit him with a sneak attack. And I find it interesting when he tells Peter here how he finds it fascinating that Peter cares more about these people than his predecessor. So it's just kind of like, man, Strange must have just been out here letting people get it. And I mean, I wouldn't put it past Doctor Strange because in high stakes situations, and I mean, we even got an example as recent as Blood Hunt, where he was like, yeah, if we got to kill all the vampires to save the world, let's do it. Oh well, which is the complete opposite of what Peter would do, because Peter would always try to find another way. And so from here, Peter goes to stop the next Crimson Canine, only for his spider sense to go crazy as he dodges another whip attack from Calyx. And as Peter gathers himself, the next thing he does is call out the spell Binding of Arceus, as he shoots his magic webs and stops the last Crimson Canine. So for a moment here, Calyx is like, do you really think a simple binding will stop my hounds? So Peter's like, no, not really, but sending them back to wherever they came from should. And it's right there where Calyx is like, that was not the binding of Arceus. And Peter's like, nope, Arceus is a Pokemon, as Peter goes on to punch the crimson snot out of this guy. But during this time, for a very brief moment, we jump over to Aunt May and Peter's girlfriend Shay. Because like we saw earlier, Peter and Shay was supposed to head over to May's for dinner. So now with it being about that time, Shay is on time and Peter is late. And this leads to Shay saying, is Peter always like this? I know he has a lot on his plate, but I just feel as though I don't know. He seems really distracted. So May tells her, Peter has always been a bit distant at times, but I think right now he's just going through it. Be patient with him. He's a good man. And what ends up happening with it being just the two of them here waiting on Peter, Aunt May takes this opportunity to just talk with Shay and get to know her. But back over with Peter, who's in the middle of trying to save the world here. He makes it clear that the whole bait and switch thing with him calling out a fake spell, it was something he did mainly because the other Scions kept telling him only amateurs call out their spells. And I like that we eventually saw that come in handy here, because that's been a thing since the start of this event. And so for a moment here, Peter asks Calyx if they're done. And this dude just tells him, "I will never yield to you." So Peter's just like, alright, suit yourself. Just before he gives this guy the business. And I mean, sure, Calyx, he gets a hit in or two, but Peter gets to work in this dude so bad that it causes him to feel bad for the guy. Cause Peter's just like, it's sad how bad he is at fighting and how surprised he is every time I land a punch. But he keeps throwing hands for a good while here. Cause for a moment, Peter's like, hey, if this is what I gotta do to not die, then so be it. But even still, eventually Peter's just like, look, would you just yield, bruh? This is embarrassing. I'm embarrassed for you, and I'm the guy who knows what it's like to take a beat down. And at first, Calyx is like he's still not giving up, at least not until Syra shows up, and she tells him enough. You cannot continue. It's my turn. And is right there with Calyx is like, fine sister, have your moment. But in a way, it almost seems as if this were too easy, or as if the twins had something extra up their sleeve. But nonetheless, with Peter winning this challenge, it surprises him, because he finally defeated one of the Scions without dying. And as Syra approaches, Peter asks her if there's any chance that they could put a pin in this till tomorrow, because you know the man's got things to do, he got places to be. But of course, she says no. So Peter's just like, okay, show me what you got. Only for Syra to tell him what I've got. I've got the inevitability of death. So yeah, with Peter making his way to the next Scion, and doing so with an extra death, I truly believe that it's too early to celebrate, because if he needs more than one death for any of them, that's just gonna put him right back in the same spot. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.